So for our reading today, I would like to share some of my own ponderings on the correlation between summer solstice and Father's Day. I'm referring to the story of the Celtic Wheel of the Year and how the Oaken King is at his peak in summer and the Holly King is at his ebb. Yet during the summer solstice festival, when the Oaken King and the Holly King have a contest of strength, the Oaken King wins but is pricked. He's wounded by the Holly King, which results in the death of the Oaken King at Halloween, ushering in winter. This story makes me think of the moment when a son becomes as strong as his father. This is a proud moment for a father, but it's also the apex beyond which he will fade. I imagine a father and a son arm wrestling and the father being surprised by his son's prowess. The father is bested and proud at the same time. Maybe they arm wrestle for 2 out of 3, and the father wins but hurts his shoulder in the process and never fully recovers. Then this is the apex of the father's strength. Symbolically, summer solstice can also represent how becoming a father is to choose to care for another life, to choose to put children before oneself so that they grow strong, even if that means exhausting oneself for them. But what happens when a father is weak or a struggling father? How is a child affected by being wiser or stronger or more courageous than their father, especially if the child discovers this when they themselves are still so young that they're not emotionally ready to be the leader? Might the child unconsciously model weakness while calling it strength, making the father strong in their minds when they are not? What if the child grows up modeling a tyrant or an addict, but believing that they're modeling a strong leader? How does one let go of negative modeling and behave differently from our fathers when human children are designed to imprint like all animals do? How do we allow our fathers to be human, weak, defeated, and afraid, and not become so ourselves? I remember when I was getting a hold of this topic for myself, I shared about it during Joys and Sorrows one day when I was assisting in one of the RE classes at the Olympia Unitarian Universalist congregation. I talked about my disappointment in myself for having a bad temper and how I had modeled that behavior from my father. I had come to realize that anger and intimidation are not the same thing, that it was possible to express anger in helpful ways. To change my behavior so that I didn't try to hurt and intimidate others when I got angry, I had to admit that my father wasn't a hero because he was usually hurtful and intimidating with his anger, which made him a villain, not a hero, and not someone that I wanted to model myself after. And this made me feel sad. After I finished sharing, I looked at the faces of the children in the RE class. One little boy looked shocked and close to tears. And I knew I'd said something that hit home for him. And I wondered if I should not have said it out loud, if he would have been better off not knowing at such a young age. When is a good time to see our fathers clearly? When are we old enough to bear such a devastating revelation?
Sometimes planets align. Sometimes events occur simultaneously. Sometimes we try and make meaning out of what appears to be coincidences. Such is the time today. We're trying to understand why 3 events are all occurring at the same time. Juneteenth is today, Father's Day is today, and the summer solstice is Tuesday. What do these 3 annual celebrations have to do with each other? Well, Amy shared her ponderings about how 2 of them can be compared, and I took on the challenge when this service was planned. Now, you have to appreciate how challenging it is for a Unitarian Universalist minister to try and acknowledge all religious holidays from all religions each year on Sundays. I mean, if you think about it, starting in September, we have Labor of Love, water ceremony, fall equinox, Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, All Souls Days, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Sahim, winter solstice, Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, flowering ritual, Ramadan, spring equinox, Palm Sunday, Easter, Earth Day, Cinco de Mayo, Mother's Day, Beltane, Father's Day, summer solstice. If I dedicated one Sunday to each one of these days, I'd have few Sundays to talk about anything else. So today, we're going to squeeze three of them together. Juneteenth, originally a Texas holiday for good reason. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of the Civil War and slavery, although the Emancipation Proclamation was signed 2.5 years earlier. Many slave owners continued to hold their slaves captive even after the announcement. So Juneteenth became a symbolic date representing African American freedom. So what I just said was a quote from a document of a Congressional Research Service. For me, a Texan fails to capture what that day really was. I grew up in Texas, and Juneteenth was an annual celebration by folks from what we very politely called the black side of town. I grew up in the segregated Deep South. My friends and I didn't know what this celebration was about, why these folks had a parade, or what it meant. It was only a curiosity. You see, after the Civil War, or as I was taught, the war between the states. You'll still find that in the South. After that war, the South was slow to accept defeat and still slower to change. When Texas fell and Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston with 1,800 soldiers, it wasn't exactly an instantaneous magic for the Lone Star State's 250,000 slaves. That was 1/3 of the population of Texas. 1/3 of the population was enslaved. After Juneteenth, on plantations, the masters decided when and how to announce the news, or wait for a government agent to arrive. It was common for masters to delay the announcement, this was June, to delay the announcement until after the harvest was done in the autumn and fall, or for as long as possible. Even in Galveston itself, the ex-Confederate mayor basically flouted the army and ordered all freed people back to work. Juneteenth was a proclamation day, and there was a statement, and I've stood on the building where Major General read this in Galveston, and he read, quote, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." But June 19th, 1865 was not a pivotal moment. It was not a moment when everything changed. Texas officially commemorated Juneteenth as a holiday 115 years after the Declaration. But a change from slavery to freedom, to equality, it's a blurred transition, and a transition that's still in process. So for me, Juneteenth is an annual reminder of changing perspectives. Juneteenth is a reminder that change can happen, but only happens at a rate that time allows. It's a bittersweet holiday. Juneteenth is an annual reminder that changes bring sorrow and hope. Father's Day. Father's Day became a national holiday in 1972. I think there were fathers before that. But in 1972, it became a holiday. 58 years after Mother's Day was declared that status. Now, Mother's Day was instantaneously popular in large part because of retailers. They saw great potential in this holiday. But the campaign to celebrate Father's Day did not meet with the same enthusiasm. And here's one florist, quote, "Fathers haven't the same sentimental appeal that mothers have," end quote. Now, in all fairness, some states did recognize Father's Day in the early part of the 20th century. But today, Father's Day is 50 years old as a national holiday. 50 years. Now, as Amy's pondered, fathers and fatherhood is a transitional role relative to children who are constantly changing. And fatherhood has an arc. The beginning of the arc clearly has the good father as all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving to their offspring. But children are born changing. And the interdependence and the interrelationships with fathers never stops changing. It never stops. Even my own relationship with my own father, who died in 1977, continues to evolve and change. My views of his life and what effect he had on me continue to change. Father's Day for me is not a pivotal moment. I may never forgive him of everything, but my list gets shorter every year. So for me, Father's Day is an annual reminder of changing perspectives. Father's Day is a reminder that change can happen, but only happens at a rate that time allows. It's a bittersweet holiday. Father's Day is an annual reminder that change brings sorrow and hope. Summer solstice. Technically, 2 moments of the year when the path of the sun in the sky is farthest north in the northern hemisphere, farthest south in the southern hemisphere. The moment marks the beginning of summer. In 2 days from today, summer begins for us. And for all those people who love long days, here's something to ponder that Amy shared with me. Why do we celebrate this on the day when days are starting to get shorter? Because come on, from Tuesday, every day's going to get shorter. So we're celebrating it. Anyway. This observation that made me consider, while the summer season is filled with gardens and beaches and family vacations, it's a transitional day, holding both a beginning and an end. Solstice is the ending of longer days and the beginning of shorter days toward autumn and winter. Solstice is a time of changes, though the changes are slow and subtle. So subtle that most of us cannot even recognize them, hardly notice them. We're thrilled and enamored with the warm, long days and being outside without a jacket. For me, summer solstice is an annual reminder of changing perspectives. Summer solstice is a reminder that things can change can happen, but it only happens at a rate that time allows. Another bittersweet holiday. Solstice is an annual reminder for all of us that changes can bring sorrow and hope. So today, we gather to reflect on all 3 concurrent events: Juneteenth, Father's Day, summer solstice. And I propose that all of them are change events to reflect upon. They are all a reminder that change happens, but only happens at a rate that time allows. They are bittersweet holidays, annual reminders that change brings sorrow and hope. And these concurrent events are not a coincidence. Not at all. These three events are part of the continuous message that the universe is shouting at us. The universe is constantly showing us that there is one eternal truth, and it is this: everything changes. It's just that we're not paying attention 99% of the time. We see life and we try and divide it up into steps or ladder rungs or chapters instead of what life really is. Life is a mess of overlapping transitions and changes that bring both sorrow and hope, joy and frustration, pleasure and disappointment, sadness and optimism. Sometimes planets align. Sometimes events align. Sometimes we try and make meaning out of what appears to be coincidences. Such is today. My prayer for everyone is to pay attention to the entirety of life. Things that you feel are only for the moment. Everything changes. Everything changes. Amen. Blessed be.